Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Jan Desper Peters, and I'm your host for BTST Services Podcast, Meeting You Where You Are. We're so excited today to join you live. We usually record, but we are live, and I invite you to like and share so that people can get this great information. Our podcast is really around all aspects of emotional wellness. We try to bring you factual and informative and intriguing information from subject matter experts and people with real life experiences. And though the information may not resonate with you at this moment, we believe that time and time again, if you go back and re-listen to our podcast, it will meet you where you are. So again, we invite you to like and share and welcome again to the BTST Services Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest who is co hosting with me. We at BTST Cares have interns. And so this young lady is a student at Stevenson University. And actually, the topic for this podcast was her idea. And so I'd like to introduce you to Joelle Jones.
How you doing, Miss Jan?
How are you, Joelle?
I'm great.
Great, great. So tell the folks a little bit about you.
Well, first off, I'm a psychology major at Stevenson University. I have an associate's in psychology. Everything regarding the mind and mental health, I'm interested in. And of course, with individuals my age, I'm a college student. With what's going on right now, I just wanted to get that perspective, a different perspective of, and hear other people's thoughts of what's going on right now.
So I want to thank you for bringing up this topic. Joelle and I were talking, and she was saying to me some of the things that she was going through in a virtual environment and as a college student. And I thought about my role as a mother and that I have a student, a university student, who's going through the same thing. Some of you may be in your home, some of you may be on campus, but there's still some real challenges to this environment, not only because it's virtual, but because we're living in a world where there is a worldwide pandemic. And so we also asked to join us Dr. Adena Johnson. So Dr. Johnson serves as the Associate Vice President for Student Equity and Inclusion and leads the Office of Student Equity and Inclusion at Georgetown University. In this office, there are other departments, the Center for Multicultural Equity and Access, the Community Scholars Program, and the Georgetown Scholars Program. In this role, Dr. Johnson provides leadership for a broad range of work focused on student access and success, diversity and inclusion work with students. She consults with schools and units across the institution and contributes to Georgetown's work with the American Talent Initiative. Dr. Johnson received her degrees from Prairie View A&M University in Texas and Marquette University. Prior to Georgetown, she was a member of the Loyola University faculty as an associate professor and the director of the African and African American Studies program. She also has published extensively. She is a licensed psychologist, and her extensive clinical experience further deepens the perspective she brings. And I'm proud to say that she is also my soror. She is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, a dance teacher and a comedian. And if we don't need laughter right now, at any other time in our lifetimes, we need laughter. So welcome, Dr. Johnson, and thank you for joining us today.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Jan, for the warm welcome and introduction. And Joelle, it's a pleasure to be on with a fellow psychology person. And I'm very excited and delighted and honored to be here and a part of this conversation.
Very good. We have one other guest.
Okay, so I have a special guest. I have my friend and sister, Jocelyn Christian. We've known each other for about 10 years, so we kind of have a feel of what's going on. She's actually a junior at Morgan State University, so I just want to have her on and we have our experience and Dr. Johnson has her experience. So I'm ready for Jocelyn.
Hi, everyone. I am Jocelyn Christian. I would like to thank Miss Jan as well as Joelle for this lovely opportunity to be with you all. I'm actually a senior at Morgan State University. Glory to Jesus. I am a senior who studies music with a concentration in vocal performance. And I'm just super duper excited for this conversation. I think it is very well needed. There's a lot of different emotions and a lot of different feelings that are being tossed around, especially, just within my group of friends. We like to check on one another just to get those mental health check-ins. But I believe that this is going to be and so needed. So thank you so much.
Thank you. You're at the world-renowned music school at Morgan State University. So, of course, we all know about the Morgan State University choir. And so we're just happy to have you here, Jocelyn. So I just want to kick off by just asking Dr. Johnson, and if we kind of step back to March when everything started shutting down initially and students had to leave campus and kind of be put into this virtual environment instantaneously. Like, what was that like? What were the students saying to you? How were they navigating that? And then how did the university prepare for the fall for students to come back into that environment?
That's such a great question. I think this was all obviously a surprise to everyone. And part of what I think happened, at least at Georgetown, was that our students didn't think that they wouldn't come back.
Right.
So I think that the original idea was that, okay, we'll pack everything up in March. We'll go to our permanent residence, but we'll be back in August to start the fall 2020 semester. And that didn't happen. I was not a part of the deeper planning once we got through that spring semester at Georgetown specifically. But in some of the earlier conversations that I was a part of, we were really just watching what was happening with the pandemic and the numbers and the hot spots across the country. And as you all would know, Georgetown attracts people from all over the world, let alone all over the United States. And so when we're looking at these hot spots, we had to think about what is the risk and how do we mitigate that risk? And a lot of preparation was put into preparing faculty and students to be able to engage in a virtual learning environment. And part of my responsibility as someone housed in both my position is situated as a liaison between academic affairs and student affairs. And so I am concerned with our students' experiences inside and outside of the classroom, right? Their overarching well-being. And I wanted to make sure that even if we were in this virtual space, that we had given a lot of consideration to the other aspects of our students' lives. And we did have, and still do, have a small number of students who remained on campus, who didn't go back to their permanent residence for a variety of reasons. Some of them, we wanted to support them because they have very difficult family circumstances. Some people were experiencing homelessness, had situations where there was abuse present. Others couldn't go home because they lived out of the country and were unable to travel, or they lived in hotspots where they couldn't really move around too much either. And so right now we have about 500 students who are on campus. It was a little bit less when we transitioned from spring to fall. And so again, thinking about how do we support students with counseling, with engagement, resources, financial and otherwise, regardless of whether they're on campus or they're back at home.
Dr. Johnson said a lot in that statement. And Joelle, I want you to flesh that out, even from your personal experiences, and then with Jocelyn, to kind of talk about that, because I know that there were students in March that did not have any place to go. I mean, I was anxious because I kept saying to my son, we're coming to get you. And he was like, not until the very last moment that the school said you must go did he want us to come. But he could come home. There are some students that could not do that. There are students who were working on campus that were, um, you know, they needed the monies that they were earning from those jobs to continue their schooling, and they were really taking care of themselves. And then, as Dr. Johnson said, there were, you know, various home situations where people couldn't go back to, and even international students who couldn't, you know, go back to their countries. And so just wanted to have you talk about that, maybe from a personal experience, and then, you know, we'll transition into, you know, asking Jocelyn the same question.
Definitely. I think the main part was that it was something that was completely off guard. For me personally, it was my spring break. So right at the spring break mark, they're like, you can't go back. I'm not sure if we can go back. There's no when. There's really no answers we could really attest to for me personally. So we had to adjust. I'm sure a lot of people didn't have online learning like ever before. Everybody's used to in person. So it was a weird adjustment and it was very unexpected. I think that was my main part. So my question for Jocelyn is, with it being your senior year, do you think that schools should have taken the fall semester off until the country had everything more organized?
I actually do wholeheartedly, even though it is my senior year. And I was so looking forward to my senior year homecoming and, being around my friends and all of that. I definitely believe that safety is our first priority, no matter what. In these troubling times where we don't know what to do. And it was a point in time where there were no vaccines. People didn't have answers. People didn't have solutions. And I believe our students are our most important priority. We don't want to do anything that puts, ourselves in danger, anything that puts our faculty in danger, and things of that nature. And it's very interesting that you brought this question up, because I remember literally the first day they told us to go home. It was just like okay, we'll go home. It's fine. I'll see you guys soon. You know, I had literally just finished up a performance with my choir in Philadelphia. We had did Grant Still's Porgy and Bess. And we're coming home and, we're just chatting and talking. We get back and I'm a part of the singers choir, which, for spring break, we go on a tour. We were supposed to have a whole spring break tour in Texas, going to Houston, going to all of these locations and every different, fun ideas that you have plans, with your friends. And you're just like, oh, we're going home? Okay, sure. We'll go home. Let's go home. So now we're trying to readjust and, transition into everything. And that was really challenging because as a music major, my learning is predicated upon being around other musicians.
Right.
And a lot of my learning is done in the classroom, where we're singing in class, where we're listening for different chords and notes, writing things down in class. And there was a really big adjustment. As a voice major, I had my own personal lessons. So where I will go to my teacher's office for 50 minutes to an hour and have a singing lesson, I now have to transfer over that to do that through Zoom and doing that through FaceTime and, running around trying to find different locations to make sure that the sound is coming through clearly. It was a really different change and a real different adjustment, but it had to be made. It was one of those things where why sacrifice at the expense of just trying to learn when you can still do that remotely. It was different and difficult, but it was definitely needed.
Dr. Johnson, I appreciate that, Jocelyn, because I hadn't thought of that perspective where, if you're a certain major, it requires you to be around other people. It requires you to be in the presence of someone else so that you can hone your craft, so to speak. And so I appreciate you bringing that out. But I was also wondering about when students are now in a space where they are on Zoom and they are FaceTiming with their professor. They're not in a classroom with, excuse me, with other people. And they're not doing the group projects anymore. In Jocelyn's case, she's not with her choir. Like, can you share with us your thoughts on how isolation may affect a person's studies and just their socialization, feelings around socialization, because they, have that void?
Sure. It's a great question. As a huge truck just went down my street, I apologize for the noise.
That's okay. It's the environment that we're in.
It happens to me all the time. And that's a good segue, I think, into something I like to talk to my colleagues about all the time is thinking about the context in which our students are learning. And the context is not the same for everyone, right? So as we talked about, the number of students or the circumstances that will prevent students from being able to go back to their permanent residence, assuming they have a permanent residence, that if they are, that everyone has strong Wi-Fi, that everyone has, multiple devices, right? Like for thinking about psychology students, other social science students are taking statistics and you're looking at different data sets, doing that on one screen, right? The stressors that come along with that not everyone could have another monitor in their home, right? Or a space that would fit all of that. There was a circumstance with a faculty member who was asking students to keep their cameras on at the start of our virtual learning period. And the student was keeping their camera off because they were in a room with several siblings, I think two other younger siblings who were also virtually learning with their devices, tablets and laptops, all in one space together. And so, not only is that a distraction visually, right, as you are looking at yourself and these other folks around you, but then thinking about, what that means for outing yourself and your socioeconomic context and socioeconomic status. And so, you have the logistics of the learning process, of the learning environment and the context that people are living in. Then you also have these other factors, like the fact that rates of COVID infections were higher amongst Black and Brown communities.
Absolutely.
And that Black and Brown people were succumbing to COVID at higher rates than their white counterparts. And so the stress and worry of contracting COVID, when people might be sick in your home or sick in your family, in your community. I had a cousin who contracted COVID in March. And I was very worried and concerned about her and thinking about her every time I had to go into meetings and people were talking about COVID and rates of infection and all of that. Fortunately, she's doing better now. But I think about particularly Black and Brown students who these things are front of mind for them. And then you add to that these instances of racial hatred and violence toward Black people, oftentimes at the hands of law enforcement. So you have all of these compounding contextual, structural racism, institutional racism factors that I think students of color are definitely impacting their ability to just be a college student. And many of these factors pre-COVID were present, right? They have nothing to do with COVID, right? They were there before. And then
Right.
you have this global pandemic, which even further exacerbates these challenges. And so I felt like my job, my job is to ensure that that consideration is a part of the way that professors, faculty are conceptualizing of their pedagogy, like how they teach, how they approach the virtual classroom, that our staff are thinking about that in terms of our students' experiences. I was on a very lengthy call earlier this morning about academic processes and what it means to go on probation during COVID times. Like
Right.
these are all those kinds of considerations that are really important, particularly for folks who are from historically, socially, politically marginalized backgrounds. So I don't know if that kind of answers your question, Ms.
It does. It does. And I'm glad you brought up the point as it relates to even not just about how a student is progressing with their studies, but they have these other elements, if you will, that they're thinking about, whether it's, the world that we live in and I think that the election showed a lot. Even though Joe Biden had the margin of victory, it still showed that 70 million people voted for Donald Trump and all that he represents. And that's the way I look at it. And so you're dealing with a society that, you have to deal with race all the time. You're dealing with, this pandemic. You're dealing with social determinants of health. You're dealing with health disparities. And also, you have to deal with the fact that you're in school and there's a certain level of expectation that you are successful, that you produce, that you continue to do the work that's put before you. And so, Joelle and Jocelyn, I just really would like to have you share with us how that has been for you. And in doing that, would you also share with us how you kind of created some tools that helped you kind of move along the continuum to get to that space of I can do this?
Absolutely. For me personally, I would say Dr. Johnson hit a tough spot for me. How she said statistics, how that's like an in person, yeah, that's an in person
Sorry,
type of
Joelle.
subject. It's like,
Didn't mean to trigger you.
and I'm yeah, everybody has different learning styles because we forget about that. Some people learn audibly, some people learn with visually. It's just different learning styles that every individual has that you got to think about. And just learning from a screen is just not enough. And it's like the balance of you're a college student, just push through, you're about to be an adult world. So it's like, it's going to be like this. So get used to it. But then it's just like, we're in a pandemic at the same time. Have some mercy on us. We're trying to adjust. It's a lot going on. And like Dr. Johnson said, like our home environment, like that student who had other siblings and stuff, is just like, I don't feel like colleges were really, of course they thought about it, but they didn't really think about how bad it would impact us. And I think that our home environment should be our home environment. So us taking the classroom into our homes is, of course, we have to do homework and stuff, but taking that burden at home where you're supposed to be resting is it was a lot for me personally. That adjustment was very, very hard. I'm still adjusting. It's very hard. We're almost finished the semester, and it's like, am I even going to pass? Honestly, statistics. It's a lot. So, how do you feel about that, Jocelyn?
Joel, you hit it on the, oh my goodness, you hit the nail on the head. It's so overwhelming. I can't even begin to really put into words how much it has been, honestly. For me, as a senior, with so many different thoughts running through my mind, okay, I have to worry about my senior comps. I have to, not only that, being in the choir, I have to upload at least 2 videos a week. That's just for choir. At least another 5 videos, all in different languages, for my voice lesson. And then another one for another music. Like, it is so much that's being thrown at us. And even still, I'm thinking about, okay, I still have to go to work because my rent is due. I still have to go to work because I'm saving up for a car and I have car insurance. I'm still saving up because, oh yeah, I'm about to graduate and I'm an adult. Things like that are crossing my mind. I'm not even 26 yet, and I'm already thinking about how I need to secure some benefits by the time I graduate college. You know what I'm saying? It's a real thing. We're adults now. It's a real world situation, and things are becoming real to us now. So when that sets in, you really have to take a moment and breathe. I found myself literally having to step away from my laptop, step away from my phone, and I go take a walk. Not only do I get the exercise, but I get the sunlight, I get fresh air, and I have to really like pray and really, reset myself, because if you aren't rooted and grounded in peace, school can really overwhelm you. And the simple fact that it feels as if they're cramming 1 year's work of semester into about 4.5 months, it's a lot. I even had to withdraw from a class because I already knew I'm going to fail it. I don't even want to take that hit to my GPA at this point. Like, it's so many things that you feel like you have to give up just to make it. And that's not necessarily the case, but that's just how you feel. So in that, you have to, okay, stressful. In that, you really have to just stay grounded. Find different ways to relax yourself, to take a brain dump, if that's playing video games, if that's, talking to your friends. For me, I have a group of friends. We keep each other accountable. Hey,
Wonderful.
we've got test is due next week, or we'll be in, a group chat as class is going on and documenting what our teacher is saying. Like, okay, he said on such and such date, we have a test due. This date, we have homework due. This date, we have X, Y, and Z due. You have to have somebody, because at the end of the day, when you're by yourself, that's how you become susceptible to depression. That's how you become susceptible to anxiety. That's how being in your lonesome by yourself 24 hours a day behind a computer screen, you become desensitized.
Jocelyn, you have hit so many wonderful points, and I just want to encourage those who are listening. The reason that we did this live was because we wanted to engage you. We want you to ask questions. You have Joelle and Jocelyn here, and Dr. Johnson and me, and you can ask us questions, and we will leave time to answer those questions. But I think that you're right. I mean, I said earlier that I'm a mom. I have a student that's a sophomore in North Carolina A&T, and I worry about him on multiple levels. I mean, he's pretty focused and he does well, but when he went there, he thought some of his classes, he knew some of them were still going to be online and some of them were going to be virtual. When, as the semester progressed, I guess, and as maybe more cases of people became positive, they kind of rolled back some of those in-person classes to more virtual. And so he ended up maybe having only 2 classes in person. And then, he's an engineering major. So how do you take physics lab online? You know what I'm saying? And, I have an older son who also had actually a Morgan graduate, was a computer science major, and calculus was like, he just kept saying to me, Mom, it's a different animal. It's just, like he did differential equations and all the other maths. He did well, but calculus was like his nemesis. And I'm thinking, how do you do that kind of work in a virtual environment unless you have supportive professors around you? And so, Dr. Johnson, I would just like to maybe have you share, as someone who is a professor, and your colleague, talking to your colleagues, their thinking or thoughts on how they make this environment more conducive. I mean, especially around having maybe even more office hours. I'm not sure, how that works at each university, and I'm sure it's different, but just really having a heightened level of sensitivity for the students that are experiencing this during this epidemic.
Yeah, I guess, to maybe keep it more broad in terms of, I'm thinking about it in 2 ways, right? Because we have 2 amazing college students right here with us. I think about it in terms of what the university or institution's responsibility is, and then, what your responsibility is as a student and being a good consumer of your education, because you're paying for it, right?
Right.
And so whether your folks are paying for it or you're paying for it or both, but it's being paid for, you're consuming this education, right? And so in terms of what the university is responsible for, I strongly believe that prioritizing the most disaffected populations makes the classroom better for everyone. And this is in COVID times and not in COVID times. And so there's a lot of literature out there about inclusive pedagogy, right? So being inclusive in your approach to teaching, from the textbooks that you use to the smiling faces on the PowerPoint slide, the examples that you use, the names and narratives, right? All of these things, whom you call on, whom you don't call on, right? In class, that when we think about the environment, whether it's virtual or in person, that there is a variety of experiences that people have. There are a variety of contexts and situations that people come from. There are different social identities. The intersection of those identities are different for different people. And so it is the university's responsibility, in my opinion, to ensure that that is a priority. The consideration of those students is a priority, and that it is made central to the way that we think about teaching. And I don't say this just as something that I think is morally, socially a good thing to do. There's a lot of research that supports this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when we take the time to make sure we're accurately pronouncing everyone's name, or we ask them, is there another name that you would like to be called that's not on the roll, right? What are your pronouns? What kinds of ways do you learn best, Joelle, like you were talking about? When we as faculty take the time to engage in those kinds of interactions with our students, everybody's doing better. Not just the kids who are economically disadvantaged, and not just the Black and brown kids, but everybody does better.
Right.
At the focus of our teaching. In terms of students, oh my gosh, there's so much I could say. There's a lot I could say just to encourage Black women college students.
Yes.
Just on a personal level, okay. Black girl magic went across the screen at some point here, but I'm gonna pause on that and I'll come back to it. But I'll say it is okay for you to have some expectations of your faculty, and from a place of mutual respect and understanding, because they're going through it too. Trust and believe. I have a lot of friends who are still faculty members, even though I've gone into administrator land, that they're still teaching, and they have kids. I don't know if you just heard the rumble of my son getting excited playing his video game upstairs above my head. They're teaching in these spaces too, and they're teaching probably in ways that they didn't necessarily sign up for, right? They didn't think, oh my gosh, I'm going to be teaching all 3 of my classes or 4 or 5 of my classes in some cases at Morgan, right? This semester through a screen. They didn't necessarily sign up for that either. They're tired too. But you're, as a student, talking to the students, to have some expectations that the stressors, the challenges that you are experiencing, that you can communicate those to your faculty members as early as possible. If you don't feel like you're getting much from them, to talk to an advising dean or your academic advisor and say, hey, I'm struggling with Professor X. They're not really taking into consideration that I don't have strong Wi-Fi, right? Or that, I have other responsibilities and I'd like to do some things asynchronously, like I can't log on at the same time every time. The Wi-Fi is weakened because me and my 4 roommates are all taking class at the same time. And so connectivity is an issue. Like, to really communicate with your faculty member or an advisor, academic advisor, advising dean, about what the challenges are that you're experiencing, because they should make accordances for you. This is a global pandemic. This is not just, you saying that the dog ate your homework. But in terms of specifically, and I hope I'm not leaping into some of the questions that you all might be asking, but I'm just going to take the liberty. You have to prioritize caring for yourself. And I had a professor, Miss Jan, Dr. Kevin Washington.
Oh, I know, Mawada.
Dr. Mawata. I remember talking to him when I was a doctoral student. And I was like just trying to plow through everything, my dissertation and my clinicals and all this stuff. And he was like, what are you in a hurry for? And I was like, because I just need to graduate. I was like in a tizzy. And he's like, but do you really? And so now, and this is not to dismiss the need to get out there and get a job. Like you said, Jocelyn, and get some benefits, like you need health insurance, you need to pay your bills. There's some really pragmatic things. But where you can pull back, consider pulling back and taking care of yourself, eating well, sleeping well, exercising, engaging with family and friends in safe ways, whether that's virtually or you masked up or, you all are in a bubble, you're in a pod together, prioritizing that social engagement. And those are the things that you really, really should be making your foundation for all of the other stuff that you have to do. That should be your priority.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Dr. Johnson. So actually, Jocelyn and I, we've implemented exercise. We've just like, hey, for me to get out, you to get out, we're going to exercise. We're going to walk. We're going to do something to get out the house and stay focused. Do you feel that it should have been a requirement for professors to have a mental day, at least one class off a week? Or how do you feel about that? Or is it just because it's a lot to cram in, we don't
No,
have
this
time
is
for
an
that?
excellent question. So one of the things about higher ed, about college professors is, we push so hard to get these degrees and to be in that academic space to teach. We want our own autonomy, right? Like we want to teach our classes the way we want to teach them, right? And especially for me as a Black woman, I'm like, I didn't go to school all the years for somebody else to tell me how I'm supposed to do my classroom teaching, right? To a certain extent, right? I'm the boss in here, and so I want to do things in a way that feels authentic to me, that fits with my pedagogical style. But I think that during this time, being flexible is extraordinarily important. My son is in first grade, and his teacher often gives the students movement breaks. I think that's one of the rumbles that you heard was he's just so used to taking a break to just like move around. These are things that are really important. So I just did a lecture to, we had about 40 faculty logged on this past Friday to talk about those kinds of things, right? To say, take a break. Tell everybody to turn their cameras off, to go away from the computer, to jump up and down, do some jumping jacks, go get a snack, run outside, scream into a pillow, whatever it is that you need to do, but to recognize that um, there are some extraordinary stresses right now that we have to take into consideration. But again, I think this is where you making your individually responsible choices comes into play. If you feel like, oh my gosh, if I go to class today, I'm not going to be showing up as my full self. I need to take care of my mental wellness right now. I need to take a day off to do that, and know that there are consequences for that sometimes, right? Where you have a more inflexible professor, um, that the expectations to turn in work and to do other things might still be there, even though you're saying, I'm really struggling and I need a break. But that's where I think your other supports on campus and finding out what's possible for you, knowing policies that have been adjusted for this time, knowing those policies, reading up on them, those hundreds of emails that you all get that you don't necessarily want to read, you don't feel like you have time to read, to go back and try to find out what's the policy in this class I'm missing a day, to kind of be an informed consumer.
I just want to shout out my program associate who works with me at BTSD Cares, Gloria Collier, who's making sure all this beauty looks impeccable on the screen. And some of the things that she came up with as tips, and actually Jocelyn has said most of them. So kudos to you, Jocelyn. Just really being organized, that helps decrease anxiety, wanting to eliminate, as much stress and anxiety as possible, setting a routine. I know, even because I've been working at home most of the time in eat as well. And my husband kind of teases me, like, you don't ever go out of the house, like I'm in a bubble. But I have a dog. And so I have probably walked this dog more than she's been walked since I've had her, because that's kind of my exit. Like, I've been at the screen long enough. I've been on the phone long enough. I've been on too many Zooms today. I need to get outside. And during the summer, when the sun was out, people, kind of maybe not know or play down the effect that, the sun has on, you need that vitamin D from the sun. And it does, produce a different sense of energy in your body. Trying not to procrastinate. That adds stress when things start piling up. And really not only not procrastinating, but prioritize. And there are different schools of thought on this. When you wake up in the morning, you create this to-do list or create it at night, and then you do the easy things first. But for me, I do the more challenging things first, because the easy things are the easy things, you know what I'm saying? And so it's easy to put those more challenging things to the side and check off those easy things. Making sure you get enough rest. Dr. Johnson said this too, in relationship to getting enough rest, making sure you get enough sleep, and really, staying disconnected from social media at times. We could get caught up into that. Especially, I know I did in the last 2 weeks. I almost had MSNBC on incessantly because I'm waiting for the results. I'm on pins and needles, wanting Nevada and Arizona to turn. But at some point, and then having someone to help you kind of manage that too, having those inner circles that Jocelyn talked about. Like my husband said, Jan, turn the TV off, just turn it off. Right. And Gloria too, it's like, stop punishing yourself by looking at it. It's not happening right now. And then, but in addition to disconnecting, staying connected. Jocelyn, I love the way you described how you have that circle of friends that includes Joelle, that you all are texting each other, and even people in your class saying, did you catch that? Don't miss this. She said we have a test. And then even creating ways to still have study groups with each other. I know it's challenging. It's challenging for everyone. We have to be sensitive. It's kind of a mutual sensitivity. We want the professors to be sensitive with us. They want us to be sensitive to the fact that, we have these projects, but we also know that it is a challenging time. So before we wrap up, I just really would like to hear any other thoughts that Joelle, you or Jocelyn have to just encourage your peers as they go through this learning environment.
I would say for me personally, the way I've been getting through since March is just laughter. Laughing is just so good. It helps so much. Like if it's a funny movie, a meme, or anything, I think you should find ways to just laugh, whether it's with somebody or by yourself. Laugh. It is so helpful. That's my tip from me personally.
I first want to start off by saying to my peers that you are not doing as bad as you think you are. It is a new era that we're living in. It's a new time. Political arenas are changing, climates are changing. So it's okay if you feel like you're not attaining to or upholding the goals that you set for yourself. It's going to take time. But what I will say is always find a way to center yourself, to always come back to the core of who you are, whether it is, like sleeping or, exercising, but definitely take that time because it's going to be okay. We're going to be fine. I literally do find myself telling myself that on occasions, like, hey, you're okay. It's fine. We're going to be fine. This is new. So we're trying new things, and it's trial and error, but you're not doing as bad as you think you are. You guys are doing great. You're kicking butt in a pandemic.
Right. And I'm proud of all of
us.
you all too.
It's
I
new.
really, really am. The other thing I think that I found that helps me is that, and I have a stack of them over here, is that I journal a lot. I write down almost everything I do every day. So when I look back, maybe, 20 years later, when I'm talking to my grandchildren, I can kind of share with them some of my thoughts on a variety of topics during this time period, which I hope I will never have to experience again in my lifetime. But, journaling, I think, is important as well. And, just also, like Jocelyn, again, you hit it on the head, is that stop beating up on yourself. You are doing incredibly well. We're still here. There's still light at the end of the tunnel, and we're just going to keep the faith. And so, Gloria, if there are any questions that any of our viewers have, if you could pop them up on the screen now, as we ask Dr. Johnson to give us, any other tools or tips that she may have before we close out.
Oh, sure. There is someone I follow on Instagram. Separating school from work. Oh, this is great.
You will answer this one? Okay.
I'll answer this one after I say these quick things. They're very,
Okay, great.
So Mel Robbins, she is a motivational speaker, and she has really funny things that she posts on Instagram. She's an avid poster, but she says in order to feel successful, to start every day with these 3 simple things. And I have done this, and it feels very good. You feel a sense of accomplishment, and you're motivated to do more in your day. She says, get up as soon as the alarm clock goes off, right? Don't press that snooze button. Don't snatch them covers back up and put them over your head. Yeah, Jocelyn, that's all right.
Look at Joelle too.
Listen, I love to snuggle, especially as it gets colder outside. But she says, get up right away. Number 2, make your bed. It is a gift to yourself when you come back, or make up your sleeping space. Put it back as it was. And then get moving in some kind of way, even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes. You do some stretching. You take a quick walk around the block. You run up and down the stairs a couple times. You do an exercise video, whatever the case may be. But one of the things that she talks about is making these really small promises to yourself. Helps you to not feel that sense of, oh, I didn't even do anything today, right? Like I didn't accomplish those 10 things that were on my list, my to-do list. That these are really small promises that you can make to yourself every day to feel and foster that sense of accomplishment. Because I guarantee you, I can speak to my own experience. When you get up out of bed after that alarm clock goes off versus just rolling over and saying, I'm going to get up, I'm going to get up, I'm going to get up, you don't usually lay back down. Most folks don't
Right.
lay back down. And this question about separating school and work from home life, it can be as simple as things like changing your clothes. My colleagues at Georgetown, they give me the business all the time because they're like, oh my gosh, you're always so dressed up. I love what I call a lightweight beat. I like to do my makeup. Just a light beat, okay? But I put on my work clothes, actual work clothes, and I put on my makeup because when I close this laptop and my workday is done, I go wash my face, I put my sweats on. It is a small way that I distinguish from being at work to being at home or on my downtime, right? Yeah, thank you, Gloria, for the link. That's one thing. Where it is possible, and I know this is not possible for everyone, but doing your work in the same place every day, I know that can feel a little boring and kind of like mundane, but that is, your brain turns on. And I used to give this suggestion for children and adolescents who were struggling with ADHD when I was in clinical practice, to study and work in the same place and try to do as much as you can at the same time every day where possible, because your brain will say, okay, I'm turned on to do this work. And when I sit in this white chair with the red cushion, that it's time for me to turn my brain on to do my work. And when you're sitting in other places, it's time to do something else, right? It's time to play video games. It's time to scroll the gram. It's time to do something else, right? But finding those ways to make physical, actual distinctions, and then do some ritual too of, okay, this at the end, if my last class ends at 8:00 in the evening, at 8:01, this is what I do to kind of switch into a different mode, to give my mind a break, to give myself a break. Those are some of the small tips that I think can help.
Those are very helpful. Thank you so much. Joelle and Jocelyn, I'll give you all the last word if you have anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up. Oh, we have a question. I've heard that it's important to be kind to yourself during this time. What are some possible things that we can be kind to ourselves during? I guess the question is like, how can we be kind to ourselves? Some examples of how we can be kind to ourselves. And so I'll give each of you an opportunity to share one thing.
I would say self-care days or moments, because I don't know if it's possible. For me personally, I put on a face mask, music, meditation, breathing exercises, things like that. I think that's caring about your mind and your body at the same time. So I would say that personally.
Definitely self-care days, but I also love to implement words of affirmation. If it's not in the morning, or just if ever I'm feeling down, I'll go to a mirror quickly and just look at myself like, hey, you're capable, you are intelligent, you're strong. You know what I'm saying? You can do this. So definitely being able to look yourself in the mirror and just tell yourself, hey, you got this. Words of affirmation for sure, because it can definitely reaffirm some of those feelings that you may feel like you're lacking.
I would also add to maybe put some of those affirmations up on sticky notes. Like in my office, I have this whiteboard, but I also have sticky notes on my computer as well to help me remind myself that, just as Jocelyn said, you're strong, you're capable, you can do this, you're going to get through this. You can be prosperous during the pandemic. And I make up little things like that so that I can keep my mind on the positive and just get myself through these things. The other thing I do, and I know people probably like, oh, I throw those away. When people have given me birthday cards, because I've gotten, of course, many over the years, and I usually keep one or two a year, and I go back through them, especially when my mom's not with me anymore, and she would always give me the best birthday cards, and I, for some reason, kept them. And so when I get into that space, I just pick up one of those cards and I read it, and she always signed it, "Love, Mom." And so I'm like, hey, even though my mom's not here, she's encouraging me. So that's one of the things that I do as well. Okay. How can we as parents support our younger children in virtual learning? Right now, it feels like working 3 full-time jobs, trying to play teacher, employee, and parent. And that's from our illustrious CEO, Chris Simon. I know Dr. Johnson's going to weigh in on that.
I'm feeling sick in my head. I think with really young children, my son is 6. So I feel like I am a bit more fortunate in that, there are fewer tantrums and moments of upset that really are extraordinarily distracting. But, that question earlier about being kind to yourself, I think giving yourself grace. And I have accepted the fact, despite being, borderline a tiger mom and wanting my son to be very successful academically and socially, I have really planted in my spirit, and it took me some time, planted in my spirit that this will not be the academic year where we're like, splitting atoms. This is not it. This is not it. And that is okay. And what is most important for me is for me to take care of myself so that I'm whole, that I pour into myself so that I can pour into my son's cup, and that I want him to feel healthy and happy and whole as much as possible during this time with all of these extraordinary circumstances. If we come out of this academic year having met those 2 goals, like feeling okay, waking up and feeling okay, and going to sleep and feeling okay, how excellent he is at math, how he continues his piano lessons, or his soccer skills, those things are not just secondary, they're tertiary. Now I want to maintain some sense of normalcy, and I think that's important, trying to have as much routine and being organized and preparing. Those are pragmatic things. But I'd say in terms of creating a climate of health is your number one duty there. And, of course, as parents and being gainfully employed, being grateful for that, because a lot of people have lost their jobs during
That's
this
right.
time. And so doing what you can to make sure that you can continue to be employed and be able to provide for your family, and really just let everything, as much as you can let go and be okay, try to do that. It helps your overarching well-being, your state of mind. And your children feel that too, because they feel that stress. When you're really stressed out, it's going to be harder for them to even focus in their virtual learning environments. So give yourself a break.
Yeah. I don't have really young children anymore, but I'm thinking of my sister who also has a 6-year-old in the first grade, and how, kind of just dogmatic she was, that she wasn't reading the way she wanted, or thought she would, because she's a principal, she's an educator. And she's a reading specialist. So it's like my child has to read, be able to read War and Peace when she gets to the first day, of first grade kind of thing. And me, just having a conversation with her that she needed to take it down just a little bit and realize that children are going to learn at different times, and then all of a sudden it may just kind of kick off, and all children are not, even if she had a sibling, she's the only child, but even if she had a sibling, they would not be learning the exact same way at the same pace, and then really just trying to help her change some of the expectation that she had. And I think also that it helps that, and I see her do this, is that she talks to her daughter in a way that is not and I don't mean this in a bad way, condescending. And when I say that, I mean, mommy has to do a Zoom meeting and I need it to be really quiet in this space. So I need you, like probably Dr. Johnson told her son, I need you to go upstairs for 1 hour and then we can engage again and I can help you get reconnected to your work site and that kind of thing. But being honest with children and telling them why. I know when I was a child, if you asked why, it was because I said so. But I know the whole pedagogy around that has changed in the last 30 years. But, I think that children appreciate it more when we're honest with them, when we, help them understand why something is the way it is and how they can be helpful to us by doing that. I think all those things play a part in it. You ladies have, oh, wow, we have another question. Do you have any tips for students that are anxious about transitioning from being a college student to going into the real world? Who wants to take that one?
I'm struggling with that right now. So
The best thing that I can say, because I'm, trying to do that myself, is to have fun. I believe that in order to break the anxious tension that you feel, if you do something that's fun and you, well, first, let me backtrack. If you are diligent in your work and you're still diligent in the things that you're meant to do, definitely have fun. We always take care of our work before we go out and play, but the fun is always necessary because it helps you to break off that anxious feeling, because I always feel anxious about it. It's just like, ooh, graduation is around the corner, and things are getting real. Life is getting real out here. I don't know, but if you have those people that you surround yourself with, be it your family or your friends, that can keep you grounded, definitely do so. Because my mom even tells me in her older age, I will not disclose my mother's age, but in her
Don't, because you just said older age, and I'm sure I'm
yeah,
probably there.
that was close. That was a close call. But no, she'll even tell me that she's still figuring some things out. It's
Absolutely.
a learning process. Even it doesn't even matter what age you are, you're always going to learn something new. And if you keep that in mind, I think that going out into the real world will make it a lot more easier for you.
I think that you hit it on the head in relationship to, explaining as a process. I think life is a process. Life is a journey. It's not a destination. And when we think about because I can remember back when I was a senior in college, and the only thing I could think about was getting a job in my major. Like I really wanted a job that was related to all this learning I had done at, the University of Maryland. And I really believe now, since I've been past that time for a couple of decades now, and I see my children going through that, is that initially you may not get that perfect job, the ideal job, right? And I'm not saying take any job. I'm just saying that it may not happen right now. The Bible says that for everything there is a time and there is a season. And so if we operate, from that paradigm, then we know that if we stay diligent and we stay committed and we continue to do the things that we need to do, to get other work experience, to make sure that our resume is impeccable, make sure we fine tune our interview skills, make sure we continue to network, that those things will come. And so I think the anxiousness comes in that it's not happening right now. Like we are right now society. We want everything instantaneously. And if we understand that when it happens and it happens in the right time, at the right time, then that's when all of the stars align.
That was so encouraging.
Thank you. Thank you for answering all of my questions. Your answers were very insightful. Thank you. I can't pronounce your name and I don't want to mispronounce it, but I appreciate all your questions. Thank you so much. Ladies, it has been my immense joy to speak to you this afternoon. And it looks like that the people that were listening to us, they really enjoyed it too. So stay updated. You can follow us at BTST Cares and at BTST Services on Facebook and Instagram. I also have one other resource for you for students. If you feel that you're in a crisis, there's a crisis line that is available through the Steve Fund. And the Steve Fund is an organization that specifically provides resources, mental health resources for high school, college, and early career students. And I'd like you to consider going to their website, and they actually have a text line. And if you text the line at the Steve Fund, and I hope that, oh, here, Gloria, here she is. For more tips and resources, visit the Steve Fund website. And you can actually text the number and you can get a response from a counselor from the Steve Fund by texting the number that they have available. So I encourage you to do that. And I encourage you to stay well. I encourage you to stay safe, wear a mask. I know that the holidays are coming up, but we can get through this season and have big holidays in 2021. So stay safe. Know that we're praying for you. Pray for us. And you all have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the day.